like it.
Hello and welcome for the first time to my channel, Oaf Culture. I am your host, HandsomeOaf. You may know me from my gaming channel, except you don't. Today we are discussing the relatively new animated feature Superman, Man of Tomorrow. I'll tell you what I liked, what I didn't like, what I noticed about it that I thought was interesting, and my overall rating of the film. Thank you for watching the inaugural video of Oaf Culture, where we discuss pop culture news, products, drama, and we have a special heart for superheroes. Let's get into it. In order for me to like this movie, I needed to first like the characterization of Clark Kent, and I did. Clark in this movie is true to how he's usually portrayed in the modern era. He's quiet and keeps to himself in public. He can open up some in private to his parents. I don't have much to say about it other than I liked it. I think that's what they needed to do. Clark is pretty true to how we know him, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Next, what I liked about this movie was the choices for the voice cast. Okay, we have Neil Flynn as the MVP. We have Brett Dalton, and we also have Zachary Quinto among the other actors in this movie. They're really interesting choices for this cast for different reasons. Starting with Brett Dalton, everybody knows him from the hit movie The Resurrection of Gavin Stone. Just kidding. Everybody knows him because he was Grant Ward on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so it's just neat to have him as a familiar face in this different universe. Again, sadly, being a villain. But oh well. Next, we've got Zachary Quinto. Alright. He is a very neat addition because everybody knows him as Spock from the Star Trek Kelvin movies. He's also in American Horror Story and who knows what else. Really great actor, and I'm happy to have him here. And I'm interested to see if he will reprise his role as Lex Luthor in the future. I am, of course, saving the MVP for last. We've got Neil Flynn as Jonathan Kent. Of course, Neil Flynn was on Scrubs, but then he was on The Middle. So people know him from either one or both of those sitcoms. However, when he was on The Middle, he became America's dad, in my humble but correct opinion. So it is amazing, and I can't believe that nobody's ever thought to have Neil Flynn as Jonathan Kent. It works so well to have America's dad laying down that sweet, sweet Jonathan Kent wisdom. Thank you, Lord. I hope he comes back if there are more entries in this universe, and if they kill him off, I will go ballistic. The next thing to appreciate about this movie is the inclusion of J'onn J'onzz, the Martian Manhunter. This puts us in a greater universe from the beginning. We don't have to wait 2 or 3 movies to find out if other heroes exist in this version of the DC universe. They're giving them to us. They're answering that question right away, so it doesn't have to bother us anymore. We also see a picture of Batman. We hear Lobo say the number 2814 as a reference to where Earth is in space, and we know that the Green Lantern Corps uses those numbers a lot, so we have little references to the greater DC universe, and that's wonderful. J'onn, of course, is the most present because he's a character in this story actually interacting with Clark, and it's always great to have him around. Say what you will about this art style, I wasn't quite sure about it going in. I'm warming up to it the more I look at it. I started out thinking it looked a little too like Archer, but now I think it's pretty okay, and I'd like to see it evolve as we get more movies that are maybe in this universe. I am very glad, regardless, that this art style is such a big departure from what we were getting from the DC animated movie universe that just ended with Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. I never thought that art style looked good, even when it changed little by little over the course of the movies since 2014 with Justice League War. I just never could get on board with it. I thought it looked dull. I thought the heroes looked ugly. I just wasn't really happy with it. So this is a welcome change for me. On that same note, I'm glad to be moving on from the DC AMU. I felt like Most of those movies were, sadly, just a worse version of a comic that had already come out a few years before. I don't know why they took the liberties that they did sometimes. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I didn't feel like there was really too much to gain from watching them a lot of the time. There were, of course, some gems here and there, but I always really looked forward to stuff like Batman Gotham by Gaslight. That was a break from that shared universe of movies. I'm glad to be out of that overarching story, and I'm glad to be out of that art style. Sorry, it was fine. It just wasn't my cup of tea, and so I'm happy to have something new. The last particular thing that I really liked about the movie was the influence it took from Superman American Alien. That was a comic miniseries from just a few years ago. Sadly, it was written by and other than that, it was really good. I really enjoyed that comic story the whole way through. It showed Clark at various stages of his life as he was growing into Superman and figuring out what that meant for himself. It took liberties with the mythos that we already knew, but in general, I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad to see that they treated it as a little bit of source material for this movie, and I'll talk more about that later. Alright, now I've got 3 specific dislikes about this movie, so at least you don't have to hear me whine a very long time. Number 1, Jean's fake death didn't really do it for me. I don't know if I just couldn't believe it. I know I would have been really mad if he did stay dead just for the rest of the movie and he never came back. But for whatever reason, maybe I didn't feel like the writers went out of their way to try to convince me. So it just really had no punch for me when he died or when he came back. Maybe that's just a personal thing, and I'll feel different about it if I see the movie again pretty soon. Number 2 is the animation style or method or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure what it is exactly. I am still really happy that it looks so different from the DCAMU movies, but maybe it just looks a little bit too CGI to me and not quite enough on the side of hand-drawn animation. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe I'll warm up to it along with the art style later on. My third and final complaint about this movie is just that it wasn't the American Alien comic verbatim. I know it's a little bit unfair, but I just really love that comic so much. There were so many moments from it that I hoped to kind of see an adaptation of that just didn't happen. And that's okay. I just wish that I had gotten to see them. Even though I'm not getting compensated in any way, I highly recommend you check out Superman American Alien wherever you normally get your DC Comics fix. It's on Amazon, it's on the DC Universe app. However you can, just go ahead and check out this 7-issue miniseries. It covers Clark's childhood a little bit, and then teen years up to mid-20s. It is phenomenal in my opinion. It has all sorts of references that you love to see. Clark runs into different characters that you may not expect, like Batman, young baby Dick Grayson, not really a baby, Oliver Queen, and Deathstroke. But I won't tell you what happens there because it's one of the best parts of the story. Now before we go, I just want to look at some similarities and differences between American Alien and Man of Tomorrow so that we can see some examples of where Man of Tomorrow borrowed from American Alien. This is by no means an exhaustive list. I'll leave that to people who are much smarter than me, but it's just some things that I noticed and went, The first similarity we can look at is that both the comic and the movie have young Clark dealing with the anxiety in a very similar fashion of how he feels like he's pretending to be a human being. He knows that he's an alien, he knows he's different, and he feels like maybe he can never be the same as everyone else. Number 2 is an obvious one. Lobo is here in both stories. Of course, this showed in the trailer that maybe we would be borrowing from American Alien. He serves a very different role and a much more likable role in the movie than the comic, in my opinion. A difference we can see is that over the course of the American Alien run, Parasite shows up briefly, but he's not near as much of a main villain in the overall story as he is in the Man of Tomorrow movie. Now, this makes sense. You do a movie differently than you do a comic. Lex Luthor also fits into the Parasite story in the comic, but a little bit differently as well. One difference that really hurt me watching this movie was that we didn't get this particular scene with Lobo in the movie. This is what I wanted to see beyond all else as I prepared to watch this movie, and it just didn't happen. And, oh well, but that's a difference and also kind of disappointing for me. The last and biggest difference I'm going to cover is probably the most obvious one, and it's really down to the experience that you are going to have reading the American Alien comic or watching the Man of Tomorrow movie. Man of Tomorrow makes a respectable effort to not be reference city with cameos and allusions to the greater DC universe, and this is a way in which it takes itself more seriously than the comic does. You wouldn't expect Batman to show up in the flesh in this movie, and you wouldn't expect Deathstroke either. The rich people party on the yacht would be a little bit unrealistic for this movie as well. There may have also been an effort to distance this film from American Alien because so-and-so ended up being one of those guys who can't figure out how to go to work and not do dumb things. So overall, pretty obvious difference, but worth mentioning. And it's a reason why I think if you've already seen the movie, it's worth it to read the comic. Finally, it is time for the official overall Oaf Culture rating of this movie. As you know, I wished it was American Alien. Oh well, it wasn't. It really didn't knock my socks off. I am interested in seeing more. I really liked what they did with characters. I liked that it was a new, also fun interpretation. I'm really glad to get rid of the DC AMU. I just felt like that universe had run its course overall, like it or not. So overall, I'd say pretty good. I'm going to give the movie 7 out of 10 DCU reboots. If you've made it this far into the video, then thank you for clicking on the inaugural video of the Oaf Culture channel. I am HandsomeOaf. Thank you for showing up. Leave a like, a comment, or a subscription if you can bear to have an extra notification every once in a while. But of course, let me say your viewership is quite enough for me. Thank you for being here and have a great rest of your day.